Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and I am very excited to be joined by Christopher Gattelli, choreographer of Schmigaddon. And the show is so delightful because it spoofs so many of our beloved classic musicals. Um, and it continues in your choreography. So I'm wondering, what is sort of the key to, referencing famous moments of dance while still making a unique dance number of your own?
I mean, that was, to be honest, that was the joy of the whole project. Was this was one of my favorite eras. I grew up watching these films, so so much of it was just in my DNA, and I just, so much of it was in me. So I looked at it more as kind of an homage to all of my favorites, Agnes DeMille and Michael Kidd and Jerome Robbins, and it just, Ona White. I mean, just so I grew up on all of those classics. So I didn't, we couldn't copy, of course, but in a way, like there were certain steps that I just felt like there's just an emotional response. Like if you see a certain step or a certain moment, that it just, you can connect with it if you're familiar with it. And if you're not familiar with it, to audiences that might not know certain references, in a way, I felt like I was kind of passing on a torch in a way of this kind of style of dance is so specific to that era. It's so physical and so technical and so, and the storytelling and everything. But that it was such a joy to try to craft the numbers and make them our own, while still honoring all of those who we adore.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I would love to know a little bit about the preparation process for this because there's major dance moments in every single episode. Did you have sort of the body of work, the entire thing in mind at once, or were you taking that piece by piece as you went, episode by episode?
I did like a first swatch path of just kind of all of it, just because I wanted to, because it's storytelling, it's our own story, but also you want to have the references, you want to get the comedy, so you want to like find where the jokes are, what's going to land, it's kind of all of that. So we just went through the whole season and just made kind of like a little bit of a like a big mess. But then I just wanted to do that just to see what the language of the show was. Like I didn't want to get too far deep into one specific number or area and then like further on in the season go, oh gosh, that feels like nothing we've done. So I was hoping to at least have a style for the whole season that felt of the world of Schmigadoon, and that didn't kind of, nothing felt out of place. So, and it also happened during COVID. So we were, just that part of it alone was so, it was interesting to figure out, because we, at that point, literally everything was still shut down. And we had like, I had a team of maybe like 7 dancers that represented the whole cast and the whole company. So some of those larger numbers we were doing just on 7 or 8 people because of how many we were allowed in the space. And so that alone was an interesting challenge, because we would do it and send tapes to Vancouver. And so it was just that alone, trying to create it through COVID was interesting. But at the same time, I think it filled us all so much that we were actually getting to work on something like this, that I felt that hopefully that joy kind of like permeated through all the numbers and all the performances.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think the one that has been stuck in my head since I heard it, that I'm still annoying my boyfriend with until this day, is corn pudding. It's so to use the obvious pun, the dancing is delightfully corny in there. What can you just describe like the process behind making that? What goes into a massive number like that?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's why it's so, I mean, that's why too, the second you say it, now I'm not going to get it out of my head. Like it's, he created such an amazing song. But it was kind of that, that's kind of that era, those like songs about sex that weren't about sex, that, like clam bake. And, so we had all these kind of references to I'm sorry, Judas busting out all over was a little more that one, but but picking up on all of those like sexual musical number references that, you know, weren't overt. And so to how to do it so that it still felt that way with a little kind of homage, but then, you know, that just the innocence of it was so much fun to play with. And the dancers' performance in that, I think, I mean, they just did such a great job with interpreting what that fine line, what that was.
Mm-hmm. And that number is really huge. Not all of them are huge like that with that many ensemble members. How does that compare? Because you've done a lot of work on stage. How does it compare when you have an enormous number like that on camera?
Well, I mean, I have to say, to the production's credit, I mean, they were really fantastic about keeping everyone safe and protected. I mean, we were talking about the other day that, you know, I didn't really see anyone's faces until like they were in costume and they were on set. Like we rehearsed for a few weeks, and then like all of a sudden it was like, oh, that's what you look like. And it's odd to choreograph something without seeing, like, just only seeing eyes, because you don't get the full expression. I can't tell, like, are they smiling under there? Are they like, what's the, you know? So it was so fun and exciting. Like it was a whole other step. Like when they finally got to do this number and like see everyone in full costume, the whole gang there without masks. It was just, everybody, we were just tickled the whole time. Like it was blast. But it was, you know, just making sure we kept everyone safe and kind of coordinated and all that kind of stuff. But they really did take care of us in terms of giving us proper rehearsal time and making sure that we had everything that we needed for it.
Mm-hmm. And I have to, you know, I have to talk about Tribulation because it may not have the most, you know, there's not a bunch of leaping high kicks and stuff like that, but it just seems so complex. Whose idea was it to do all of this in one take? It's like, you hate to say like it was me, but because it ended up being, it was everyone like once, but I remember like there was a very specific moment in the studio that we didn't, like, we were rehearsing and like they were still casting. Like it was, you know, in that time it all happened so fast. It was like, we got the green light, we're doing it. And so it was like, go get a studio. So we were all really just like pitching in and just going for it. And again, like they hadn't even cast we didn't even know who half the principals were. And there was something about it that I was like, this could be a real feat. Like, because it's such a patter song and it's such like, it's a tour de force, really. I mean, it just is. And then I swear that day we were blocking it, the news like came through to us that it was like Kristen Chenoweth's doing it. And I was like, we're doing this. I was like, literally I was like, we are absolutely, I was like, she will get it. I was like, Kristen, out of anyone I could think of, I was like, she is the perfect person that will, like, she will nail this in one take. And so we built it in the studio, and we were rehearsing actually in a small yoga studio in New Jersey because we couldn't even get into the studios in New York. So we basically have like one of our team like be Kristen, and like she would like walk down this, and then we would put her on something and turn her. And it's, I think, side by side, aside from like the rectangle, it really didn't change that much, like going through the crowd to her finger, to her Bible, following her to the church, like all of that stuff we did in this little room. And then you get Kristen in the room and she only like just ups it by 100%. And so she's throwing out ideas and all that kind of stuff. But she got it on the first take. And when I say she, but I also mean like the crew and everyone, because it was such aside from her just getting out the words and all of that, like there were like, you know, the piece that flies in with her banner on it had to like, we couldn't see that ahead of time. And the band that appears, like we had to hide them in certain places and they had to run around the Steadicam to get in place when they opened up. And they actually put like a huge ramp. So at the end of the number, she like, you can't really tell on camera, but perspective wise, like she rises above the crowd. And they're like sliding all these things in during the number. Like there's this whole other, you know, thing that's choreographed around her. And it's just like the first time she did it, like, and the whole crew and cast like nailed it on the first time. And it was just like, we all screamed in the place because it was just like, that's how much everyone was invested. Like that to me was the mark of like, this is how invested everyone is in the show. Like, this is how much
like people are like enjoying creating this and having fun doing it. And so it was really, I'm very proud of that one because of not from my part, but just like of everyone's care that was put into it, because it could have gone astray so quick, but everyone really just, it was a really beautiful thing to see like happen.
Yeah, it's incredible to watch. You're almost, I'm like holding my breath almost the whole time while I watch it, because like she's still going. But when you have a patter song like that, it's obviously inspired by, you know, Music Man type of number. There's so many thoughts per line. There has to be so much intense technical camera work. How does that affect what you're putting into the dance and what style you're giving that movement?
Well, I mean, luckily in a way, what we did was we had like, you know, we had like stationed people that like Kristen knew to like go to like to help kind of keep her on track. And also we went through it. I mean, she's just that kind of performer. We went through it with a fine tooth comb, and she had like every moment had like a beat or a moment or an intention, like holding the Bible upside down. And I'm going to grab these two, and I'm going to like every single, it didn't surprise me that she was able to do it once because it was so clear in her head. And, you know, and then we just, I felt like supported that kind of like tornado going through us all, you know? So and then the style just kind of was an homage to Music Man. You know, we mixed it up a bit because of what it was, but you know, it was really exciting to watch come together for sure.
There's also a joke I love later in that episode where Cecily Strong is like, no, we're not doing a dream ballet. No one likes a dream ballet. But then after, which I laughed at, but then I was like, I kind of want to see what he would have choreographed to spoof a dream ballet. Was that ever like a thing in your mind of what would you do differently?
We had one.
Oh God.
We have still the music, David Chase and I, the musical director, still joke about it because we had a whole ballet of Melissa like having to choose between all of the men and like, you know, like to the different themes of music for each man. And like, but it was going to be a dream. It started off like what it was. Like, it was going to be like, they were going to do the Oklahoma, like, you know, circle each other. And then like the dancer was going to kind of take her place. But we had it, and it was like, oh, the episode's running long. We have to do something. So that was one of the things to go. But, you know, never know. Could appear in another season. So.
Yeah, bring it back. It seems.
But it's at the same time, but when we saw the joke of like, no one likes this, and her walking away was like, it's just as funny in a shorter amount of time. So it was all good.
Yeah. You mentioned before about how, you know, when you found out Kristen Chenoweth was doing Tribulation, it was like the perfect fit. How often do you get to know who's going to do what? Are you crafting things based on a performance skill set? Because then you have, you know, there's moments that are simple. There's moments that are like Ariana DeBose, who can do anything, and her number in the Schoolhouse.
For sure. I mean, that's what was interesting. We were, like when I said made that first kind of pass at everything, that's when we didn't really know. And then as people were kind of like, oh, it's this got cast, this person got cast, this, then it was like, great. And then we were able to hone in and then like really play to everyone's strength, you know, because it you know, you want to feature them and show them off to the best of their skills and everything. And you know that like Ariana comes with a bunch of great skills. So it's like, you want to showcase that. You want, like Jane, like that number was written. It wasn't written until we even got to Vancouver. Like that was a different number that then Cinco changed. And we like set it there. But then, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you have Jane Krakowski, who is again, it's just like the pro of pros. Like we're in this little car, and I don't know if it reads on film the way it does, but it was really tiny. And she was doing like all these, like with her leg over the wheel, and she was throwing herself in the back seat. I mean, she literally, like she was all over that car. And she did it until she was like, I'm going to get this, because I want this to be like a small force of nature coming through, you know. And she's like, and it's in the episode Tribulation shows. She's like, we have to make it great. Like, so it would like, everyone really like wanted to step up to the plate in a big way with this. It was like person after person. It was just like, no, we'll do it. You know, it was kind of that kind of, like passion to make it really good. And so yeah, I mean, like number by number. And I will say this too, like one of the things that impressed me most about the process was because at the start of it, like no one even saw each other till we got there. Like I had no, like normally I would rehearse, like some people in New York could come in and, you know, but we couldn't then. So I sent Cecily and Keegan videos of their final number together. Like it was like, here's a pass what I think we're gonna do, watch it. And I had like private like coaching sessions with them on Zoom just to like, does this feel right? Does this feel appropriate? I just want to make also sure that the beats felt right for them, just emotionally for their characters. But you know, does this feel right? And we settled on a version. And then when we got to Vancouver and we had that first rehearsal, like they did it. Like kind of what you see now. And like, and someone, I think someone has it on tape, and it just made us all emotional because like you could tell like they wanted it and they worked so hard. However, they did it in their own way. And then they just came in the room and they just did the dances we talked about. And it was just a beautiful, again, to show how much people really were invested and wanted this to happen. And, you know, I wanted to keep the two of them as kind of big and like showy as Schmigaddon was in all of that fantastical way. Like I kept telling them, I don't want you to be too good though. Like I want you to be great, but not like, I want you to remain human in this world. Like it's not all of a sudden you're, you know, like you snap into, like I wanted to maintain their kind of just who they are as characters while they were doing that dance. And I also think that came through. It was another lovely day of shooting.
Yeah. I want to also ask about just kind of your general approach to choreography, because I've seen your work in so many different types of shows, from this to, you know, you won a Tony for Newsies, you've done the Cher show to My Fair Lady. All these things are just very wildly different on the surface, at least. How do you think about your style of choreography?
You know, I love, in a way, I don't think about it. Like in a way, I love not putting myself in a box of like, oh, Chris does this, or oh, like go to Chris, he does this. It's like, go to Chris because he could do this, but he can also do this, or he can do like, and I think this helped in a show like Schmigaddon because like I love being funny, and I'll you know, I love choreographing comedy, but I also love things with a lot of heart. And so I loved choreographing that dance for them at the end. And I love like, so, and my process is, it's always, how do I continue telling the story from where, you know, the dialogue leaves off, and then how the song will set up how the dance should move. And so it always comes down to like, as long as I'm trying to keep the story moving forward and learning something, and by the end of the number, like what's changed or who's been changed or how to, you know, what is different now about this relationship. So, and I think that kind of carries through any, you know, if it is a classic like A Fair Lady or South Pacific, or if it's a Cher show, or if it's, you know, all the boys jumping around in Newsies or whatever it is, it's still, it all kind of comes back to the same place, you know? So, and I tend to do, and if there's a dance break, for example, like I tend to pick up where the writer leaves off. Like I'll write out my dance breaks by hand. Like I don't just start with steps and like think about like accents and things. I'll say like, I'll write out like what happens in that dance break. So, and then I'll try to motivate it, and then I'll try to come up with the vocabulary for it. And so it's that process I feel has been helpful, again, and just trying to keep story going. Cause you know, there were a few moments that were cut out of Schmigaddon, and for good reason, because like sometimes it was like, oh, in those in you know, those classic musicals, sometimes there would just be this big dance break, and not for no reason, but sometimes there was just an explosion of joy, which is also very valid if it's just like celebration. Yes, but being that we had to get so much story in those 6 episodes, like if it didn't kind of further something, then it was kind of like whittled down and whatnot, which I appreciate, because then it didn't leave anyone kind of like hanging out there. It was like that show moved. The first time I saw it put together, I was like, oh my God, it's done. You know, it's like the first episode, I was like, oh, well, it's over, you know, because we never get to see all the other scenes and things. So it was great. It was great.
Well, it's an incredible job in Schmigaddon. I can't wait to see what new thing you tackle next, what different type of story you tackle next. So thank you, Chris, so much for joining me. If you're out there watching, make sure you subscribe to Gold Derby, and I'm probably off to watch Corn Pudding once again. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you.